Kia ora everyone. Ko Dan Shinton toko Whenua, no whanganui au, ko te whanganui a tala e no moana e nai nei, ko Rupehu toku Rona, ko whanganui toku awa, ko Putuki toku marae. Kia ora everyone, Dan Shinton, I'm a Principal Advisor at Te Tūpapa Kura Kāinga in the Maori Housing Team. Kia ora.
Tēnā rā tātou anō, e uri tēnei no te rohi o mō kai pātia, ko mō whango te papakainga, he taha no ōku, no ngā muka o hene ngākau, no ati haunui a paparangi, no ngā pukawa o te wharetoa. Ko Christina Chase tōku ingoa. I'm one of the Mahi Partnership Directors that sits within Te Tūpapa Kura Kāinga, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Ngā mihi.
Ai, tēnā koutou e te pai, and ko ta inui o te pātai I tēnei ata. So on the couch, we've got Te Puni Kōkiri, Kāinga Ora, the Maori Land Court, and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Those are the overarching matua agencies. And the question being posed to each of you today, how does your organisation increase engagement with Maori landowners to achieve their housing aspirations on their whenua? Hopefully you've memorised that question on by heart, because Dan, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come and give this seat to you so that the people can see you, because you're from Putuki and you should be seen at home. No, sorry, it's not a good way to manu anybody. And I'm going to jump off the stage and I'm going to let you have a conversation about what your organisation does. Kia matua mō i o mai, ngā tāngata o te hui nei. So come and have a seat over here, Dan. Come here. Anyone can start.
I'll just jump in first. So at a strategic level, we're working with iwi chairs. They have directed us to put in place some iwi prototypes where we're trialling different ways of working and landing housing developments with them. I'm going to share that in the next workshop. In addition to that, we have our Mahi Whare Wānanga, where again we have iwi Māori and ōku from around the motu coming together on a 6-monthly, maybe moving to annual basis. They're feeding into our strategic direction, looking at how we're progressing and challenging both ministers and ourselves as to how we are going and where we need to be moving next. In addition to that, we work with Maori housing providers who are working in the public housing space. We support them to work with whānau who have really complex and high needs, providing wraparound supports and services to them. And for our whānau who are looking to build on their whenua, we have funding available to help do so, and as I mentioned earlier, that funding goes right across the housing continuum, from emergency housing right through to those who are looking at home ownership. Ngā mihi.
We'll leave our Māori Land Court whānau for last, because they're the ones that do all the mahi with the landowners. From a Te Puni Kōkiri perspective, so when I first started working on Māori housing, it was back around 2009, and that was before Te Puni Kōkiri was even involved in housing, but managed to set up a project to develop papakainga housing guideline with Te Kōti Whenua Māori and the Hastings District Council, and it became the first kind of guideline developed for papakainga nationally. Just to share a little bit about it, we were in the Māori Land Court in Hastings, and we used that post-it note thing, you know, when you stick them on the wall to just start to do the process, what it looks like. And when we finished, we'd gone around 2 walls of the Māori Land Court, and we were like, hikama, no wonder none of our whānau were building on their whenua. It was just too difficult, the process. But in terms of specifically answering the question, so in 2015, when we first got funding, and it was through Whaia Tariana, when she was in the Māori Party, and we first got funding for papakainga housing. There was no kind of responsibility on us to engage with our Māori landowners, and it was more reliant on our whānau to come forward. So there was a real reliance on our whānau to organise themselves, to meet with their fellow whānau members, look at what an appropriate entity might look like on their whenua, whether it's a Ngāhu Whenua Trust or a whānau trust, however that might look, and go through all of that process themselves before they then came in to kōrero to us about funding. However, more recently, I think in 2019, we piloted a program, a Whenua Māori program. It was really successful, and so it's been rolled out around the motu now. And so we have Whenua Māori team members in each region. Their role is specifically to go out and engage with landowners to look at developing on the whenua, which includes housing. So now in all of our regions, you should be able to go to a regional office to talk about your whenua and your aspirations for your whenua, and also your housing aspirations. So, kia ora.
I suppose I can just add the local level perspective as well. So yes, as George says, you can come to the local office in Victoria Ave. We have Whenua teams there, and they can help you. We do have people who have expertise that come from Māori Land Court and can help you through that process. We attend the Māori Land clinics that they run. We're here today. But you can just come independently. We also have a website, Inquiry Gateway, and all those inquiries come through to us and our team, and we can respond to them that way as well.
Kia ora. So with Kāinga Ora, still obviously one of our main functions is our public housing portfolio. As Matua Te Ariki was saying, that's come through from the old Housing New Zealand. But the area I work in is quite interesting in that we work closely with Te Puni Kōkiri and the Ministry of Housing as well as the primary funders for Māori housing. But the thing I've been thinking about is what can we use in Kāinga Ora in terms of the people that are there and the expertise they have to progress these housing opportunities on Māori land. And then also how we're working within the system, and also how we can kind of challenge to make changes to it. So we do a lot of preliminary assessment work, so just giving a bit of an idea to landowners what kind of constraints there are in terms of hazards, infrastructure, zoning. We also run a house relocations program. As you probably know, Kāinga Ora is investing a lot of money into our redevelopment sites, and so where we have houses that can still be used as homes, we offer those for $1 and then contribute towards transportation costs as well. So we run an expression of interest process around that. The priority is for Māori housing outcomes and Māori landowners, and we've moved about 70 homes, I think, in the past year to 18 months. And yeah, I guess another area where we're looking to challenge the existing system around Māori housing is we make a lot of submissions on district plans around the country as part of what Kāinga Ora does and promoting housing intensification. But as part of that, we're also challenging a lot of the assumptions around papakainga in district councils, and really challenging these councils to say, actually, why do you kind of have these limiting rules on the number of houses you can have on a site? I've previously worked a bit in local government, and if it's one thing about local government, they do love their rules. So we're just trying to challenge that and really put a lot of that focus on more, I guess, more of that decision-making power on the landowners rather than leaving all that discretion up to council. So we do a lot of work in that area as well. Thanks.
Whenua tātou. So I took a lot of inspiration from Ken's address this morning, and I was trying to develop my own response to his challenges, and I just wanted to frame it in terms of how we respond to this as an organisation, Māori Land Court, and my own personal response to this question being of this community here and Māori, and with those same aspirations and dreams for my own people that a lot of us share today. And the first opening thing, I would say that our Māori Land Court is a court of record and a court of inquiry. And in terms of the records, we obviously need to make sure that all the land titles and all those obligations, those legal obligations, what Ken calls bureaucracy, is bureaucracy, but it is required so that we can have something that is permanent, or as permanent as us humans believe. So that's our responsibility as an organisation. Our job, as Ken quite rightly puts it, as government servants, Māori government servants, is for us to deal with the bureaucracy and let our people build their dreams to house our future. Okay? And to that, my own personal response to Ken's challenge is I give him my personal phone number, he gets at me 24/7. And that's the sort of commitment a lot of our staff here provide to these opportunities day after day. It requires us to get our ducks lined up in a row. That's bureaucracy, that's our problem, and we need to be able to explain it to our people, our communities, in a way that they can grasp it and understand the depth and the breadth of the bureaucracy that we are required to go through on your behalf. And in terms of our response as an organisation, we have tried to develop, and it's only just recently that we've decided we're going to announce a system, a technological system, that we hope as an organisation removes a lot of those barriers for us, so that you don't have to wait for a court to be open from 9 to 5 here in Wanganui to actually handle an inquiry. You can, through the technological portals that they call them, our Pātaka Whenua base that's going to be opened, launched on April the 17th, it gives us an opportunity to work on our projects without having to wait for the doors of the office to open up. And we can carry on working on them when the doors of our offices are closed. And that's the hopes and dreams of our organisation, Māori Land Court, in dealing with some of those issues in terms of the papakainga housing that aren't actually apparent sometimes, but as we start lining our ducks up, we've hit developing management organisations, identifying properly what our boundaries are for our land blocks, etc. Over at Pūtiki here, we have a prime example of when we didn't get it right over 50 years ago, we're dealing with the issues now. We're still trying to deal with the issues now. So that's the importance of our bureaucracy and us understanding that we don't need to burden you with that. We need to help you navigate your ways through that. So our approach in terms of the breadth of information that we, as the Māori Land Court, offer to serve you is through providing those suite of services, establishing trustees, all the rules and regulations, and the blah blah blahs and the blah blah blahs. But the depth and the in-person Communication is through these positions, those ones that you've spoken to down at the information counter there. They're charged with opportunities to come to see you in your home, in your land, to deal personally and in depth with your own inquiries. And I'm going to hand it over to my learned colleague over here, Kath, to carry on.
Kia ora, Mike. Thanks for covering everything. Kia ora. Just wanted to tautoko everything we've heard this morning, and particularly our role as Te Koti Whenua Māori in engaging with you. There's been a deliberate focus on that, particularly in conjunction with TPK and Whenua Māori service, to acknowledge some of the barriers. So our roles as Paimanawa, in fact, are a reflection of that. There used to be principal liaison officers, and they've been brought back just recently to make sure that that engagement is a lot more focused towards our Māori landowners rather than the court as a one-stop shop. So a lot of us regionally have different relationships, but generally we are engaging with Kāinga Ora, MHUD, our local authorities, to clarify for our Māori landowners that make inquiries of us what the rules are, what the position is, but fundamentally also to make sure that we can assist where the whenua is ready for development. So that includes housing, of course, is a big one. So before whānau trust or whānau can perhaps go down the journey of creating papakainga or housing and engaging with some of the other agencies, the whenua needs to be in a position where they can move, where you can take advantage of the current funding and opportunities that are available through other government agencies. So that means coming to us, checking what is the position in terms of your whenua. Is your trust order up to date? Is your trust functioning well? Because a lot of the agencies will require that as a first step. They'll have a little asterisk, the whenua must be ready to move before anything else can happen. So early on in the piece, when you're starting your conversations, check in with us at Te Koti Whenua Māori, and you can do it, as Mike was saying, we're looking towards some technology maybe available next year. But prior to that, the Paimanawa role is a community-based role. We are available out of hours, so it doesn't have to be, as Mike was saying, it doesn't have to be in person. It can be over the phone, it can be a webinar. I often meet on Zoom with whānau to talk about their particular issues, and we will do that throughout the country. So our engagement is crucial at this time to be able to ensure that the opportunities that are here now are able to be taken advantage of by our Māori landowners. So simple things like checking your trustee, checking you've had your AGM in accord with your trustee, you've got your trust ready to make decisions, you're meeting regularly with your beneficiaries, your successions, encouraging each other to bring your successions into the court so that they can be dealt with. You've seen some of we talked yesterday about some of the legislative changes being aimed at streamlining applications to the court. We are under the pump a little bit post-COVID and with some changes in the way that our internal system is working. So there's some slight delays, but again, we expect that next year, 2023, we're going to have everything ready to really take advantage, as I say, of what's on offer at the moment through the other agencies. And a big part of our role is being able to also direct you to those other agencies. This kind of hui that we're having today, we want to do more of those, and we want to do them in a way that is useful for our Māori landowners to attend or to get the information. So we're looking at all sorts of opportunities, and we're also open to hearing what you as our Māori landowning community want from us as well. So kia ora for attending today, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted after listening to all of that. I think one of the important things that is coming from all of this kōrero, when you are sitting at home and you're thinking about what housing or papakainga looks like for you and your wānau, and in the context of whenua Māori or general land owned by Māori, you simply cannot go past having the conversation at home. You don't come to the Māori Land Court or the TPK to then be told, have you had the conversation with your whānau? Because I'll be honest with you, most of our people trip up at the stage they haven't actually talked to their whānau. You know? Or I want to build papakainga on my whenua. Ka pai matua, where's your whenua? When they show you where your whenua, yeah matua, there's like 800 owners on that land. Have you talked or have you made an attempt to have that conversation? Because this is one of the biggest challenges on multiply owned land. You can't just go off on your own and start all these developments. You have to have that conversation before you come in, and all these people can be in a position to help you. So I'm not part of this panel, but I know from experience that's where the rubber hits the road. You must have the conversations with each other. Now look here, in the context of these people at the Māori Land Court, we can help you to plan for those conversations. You need to lead it, but we can help you. Do all those checks. Then we're going to go down and we're going to bug the team at Te Puni Kōkiri. And if we need to all sit down and have a hui together, then that's what we should be doing. But please, come with a plan. Come already having had those conversations. Because if you come into us and you say, oh, what can I do? Well, there's only like 1 million options, you know, and you'll be tired by the time you leave because we've only got through 900 of them. So that's the wheel to all of us as landowners. Make sure you're having the right conversations with the right people. So you're ready to go and check at the Māori Land Court that your whenua and your whānau are ready. So you're then ready to go and have a conversation with Te Puni Kōkiri about funding options. You're ready to actually contribute to how we can make our councils more accountable for our ability to achieve our dreams. So you're ready to have some of these strategic conversations. I know it sounds tiring. It is. It is tiring. That's the whole point. Nothing is worth pursuing if it doesn't require a little bit of energy and time on your part. You know, Pania Newton spoke at a housing conference a couple of years ago, and she made the comment, if you can't find a cause worth dying for, then you're in the wrong business. So if this is your cause worth dying for, then you get it, you die for that cause. But there's a bit of work to do in there, and all of these people here are a part of that. And look, this was never ever meant to be a let's stick up for public servants session. There isn't a Māori public servant within government agencies that isn't busting their backsides to try and make a difference. I'm laughing when Kath talks about a pai manawa being more flexible in terms of when you can get to them. I haven't even been in the frontline business, but my messenger blows up every day from whānau or people I've met saying, hey Piri, can you help us with this? I'll refer you to Mike. But that's the game that we're in. That's why we're in the public servant, because we do want to serve the public. Anyway, sorry. We've just done a bit of a rehash of the program, and we are going to open the floor up for questions. And now attempt to be responsive to your needs. Have we got another comment from up here? Dan, you haven't spoken. My banana.
Okay. The only thing I would add, because what's already been said, is that Te Tuapapa Kura Kāinga, we are really not about having a tick box. So we want to create a relationship with our iwi partners, hapu partners, Māori landowners. So yeah, come to us early. That's key. And when you're ready to talk about funding, we'll be with you there for the journey. That's part of what we do at the ministry. Kia ora.
I forgot to ask, so we know how Marie's talked a little bit about, we know where to find the local TPK. We've met all the pai manawa from the Māori Land Court. You know where to find Mike and Jester Chambers, number 74. How do landowners come directly to Kāinga Ora or to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development? Can we just rock up to your offices?
Yeah, so I'm obviously only one person, but we do have regional advisors within Kāinga Ora, and so they're spread around the country, and Kāinga Ora itself has offices in most of the main centres. So some of them are public facing, others probably the best way is to either call through to the central line, or there's a bit of a web form as well that you can enter into online, and somebody will get in touch.
Yes, so Te Tupapakura Kāinga doesn't have regional offices, but we have people working in the regions. But the easiest way to contact us is at our email wkwo@hud.govt.nz, and we'll provide some handouts after this to provide you with those contact details, and Christina will bring them up on the presentation later on.
Alternatively, just go through your local Kāinga Ora or the Te Puni Kōkiri offices to contact us as well. Our strength and our weakness is that we don't have a regional presence, but we're working really closely with our colleagues in other agencies.
Rāwe. Okay, he pāpai a koutou. Hayden's to your left.
Kia ora, just wondering, like if we're at the beginning of our achieving our whenua, so our steps would be Te Puni Kōkiri, Maori Land Court, then go over to Te Puni Kōkiri with the papers that we've received from Maori Land Court, and then to Kāinga Ora for funding and like taking our plans and what our dreams and aspirations are for our whenua. And my question is that like you all have funding that you can apply for. Can you apply for the lot, or is it just to one service? So can I apply to Kāinga Ora for funding, to TPK for funding, to whoever, or no?
That's a really good question. So there's a process like for whānau, when whānau are working through that, and you talked about sorting out the whānau stuff with your whanaunga, then you identify your whenua, then you're going to the Māori Land Court to see, is there a trust on that block of land we're wanting to build on, or do we have to set a trust up? And so there's working out the whenua side. During that stage, there's potentially funding available through both Te Tupapakura Kāinga and Te Puni Kōkiri for that. We won't both fund the same thing, but one or the other would fund that initial feasibility where you're going through and identifying your whenua, identifying what it is you're wanting to build, even getting to the point of meeting with builders, meeting with planners from council, etc., to get all of that pulled together into your feasibility plan. So there is funding support available from both Te Puni Kōkiri and through Te Tupapakura Kāinga to kind of help with that process. What I will say though, and you probably already know this, is that the demand for funding is probably 100 times more than the funds available. And so the reality is then there's a pipeline of whānau that have been waiting to access funding. So if you had a hui on Saturday and then on Monday you went to the Māori Land Court, and then on Wednesday, well, we're going to go get some funding, it's not going to happen that quickly. But in answer to your question, yes, there is funding support. And then when you're ready to do the build, then either Te Tupapakura Kāinga, Te Puni Kōkiri or Kāinga Ora, we've all got funding available to help with whatever the type of development is you might be looking at completing as a whānau.
I just want to add to that, that in our region, because there is such a long wait for feasibility funding, that the local staff will help you, support you to do as much of that feasibility as you can yourself. And we're happy to go to the council with you We're happy to look on the council's district plan with you, show you what might be the restrictions, and really try and get you as far along that pathway as you can go by yourself. And what we're finding is that when you get to the construction, you know exactly what you're doing. You haven't used a consultant, you've done it yourself, and we're finding that's really great.
And just a little in terms of who's working in which space. So for the most part, Te Puni Kōkiri are focused on the smaller scale papakainga projects of Whenua Māori anake. Whereas in Hard Te Tuapapakuru Kāinga, we're looking at larger scale projects. Some of those could be mixed housing developments, so e.g. you may want to do a mix of public housing as well as affordable rentals or home ownership products. So that's how we're working it between ourselves all the time, and yeah.
Yeah, just a further comment to that. As my colleagues here have said, that the funding for housing on Māori land primarily sits with HUD and Te Puni Kōkiri. Just as an aside, Kāinga Ora does offer a number of home ownership products as well. So we have first home loan, which has low deposit requirements, up to certain amounts of lending. There's a first home partner scheme, so that's a shared equity type arrangement which reduces deposit requirements. And the other one's the first home grant, which is a dollar matching type scenario if people have been contributing to KiwiSaver as well. So there's those other options there as well on top of the funding that's held in other parts of government.
We're just human resources rather than actual cash.
Kia ora. What percentage of landowners need to agree to development of their lands?
Sounds like a mighty cool.
Kia ora. So when you say percentage, do you mean beneficiaries of a trust, or do you mean owners that are owning in their own right?
Yeah, both.
Individual owners. So what the court will look at, so there's not a magic number. It doesn't have to be 100%. One of the issues will be the succession, for example. So are all the people that are named as owners, does succession need to take place? The court will look to see that there has been a proper process to discuss a proposal, to meet and give everybody the opportunity to take part in that discussion. The court will also look at what the balance is between those that object and don't have such a large shareholding versus those that want to proceed because they do have a large shareholding. So there's some equity that's recognised there in the Act, in our legislation. As I say, it doesn't have to be 100%, but the court will hear what the objections are based on and what the proposal is. So it's not easy, I guess, to give you an answer, but there's certainly provision. The key thing is that you have spoken to each other. You have notified all the people that are entitled to be notified about a proposal, and you've held a meeting where everybody has an opportunity to express their view. Depending on what it is that you're seeking from the court, it's a good idea to come before you maybe even start to hold your hui and just get some detail around what it is that you're wanting and how you might be able to go about calling a meeting of owners. Thank you.
And we'll take the last question here. Thank you, Evie.
Tēnā rawa te koutou katoa. E nā mai ana I runga te ātawira. Tuatahi mihi atu ki ariki. Ko tō kōrero e korotia nei runga ra. Me haroro atu. And I have to admit, you gave me the mana moku. The way you spoke, I saw, for me, I just saw my tupuna, my ancestors, Whenua. So that really got me. Sometimes I get a little bit confused with some of the kōrero that happens. At the moment, especially, I'm not too English orientated. So I tend to go back to my elders. First of all, a couple of questions. I mean, probably it's going to be I don't know whether it's going to happen, but we were talking here at the table, and we're thinking, can that be a one-stop shop?
That's true.
For all of you that are sitting up there. That was just a thought. But however, the question number 2 is, for me, also, I like the idea what Petty was saying, that we do our homework at home. Mai tērā, ka kingi hea huarahi. E hana mōku, ngā tupuranga ka reka mai tonu. E tika e la kōrero. So it's really important, especially for our future, for our generation, to make sure for us, for me, to do make sure I get my homework done first. And the difficulty I have at the moment is I'm doing that also, but for me, the grand, there's a lot of my tupuna that have been gone minor, and me trying to research where everybody is. And that sort of brought me into what Piri said. I don't know how many are in the shareholder blocks that I am in, and I know there's heaps of it, but it's really difficult to try and know who they are because of what had happened minor. So I was kind of locked out, or locked down, if ever the word is. So I suppose I'm asking anyone, is how do I get past that barrier? Or how do I do, because I know I've got a lot of whenua out there that don't know. Because they're already colonised, if I can say that word. But ora tō tamariki mokopana, they want to come home. So mi pēa ana māku hei, a whina atu i a rātou, mi pēa ana koutou oki. Kuna tā. Ngā mihi nei.
Okay, let's go with the easy question, eh? One-stop shop. Is there enough people on that stage with the right pay delegation to respond to that? Because I know I don't. What's worse is I'm probably going to respond.
I think it's a responsibility of all the agencies to make that happen, and we do. I think the people that are working in the Paimanawa space, especially, I know with my colleagues that I've dealt with in TPK and in Kāinga Ora, we try to keep each other up to date and understand what's happening. There are regional differences as well. I just noticed that. Just want to point that out for you here. That would be something to keep pressing for. Certainly your Paimanawa, Mike, has got those contacts. So even though there's not a one-stop shop, it would make sense if you did go to any one of us, we would be able to put you in touch with the correct person at the other agency in terms of a one-stop shop approach.
Initially, so you've heard from people with experience from 2000 this and 2000 that. I've been in this position since 2000 and yesterday. But if we hear the voice of our community expressing this need, then I think we have a way of negotiating that space with our community support, rather than saying, oh, this is a bright idea that Michael had from nowhere. So we need your support, all of our hui support, to be able to provide that one-shop service. It won't be 365 days of the year, I know that, because Maori Land Court doesn't have any funding, but we can certainly provide an opportunity maybe on a monthly basis for people, ourselves, to be, our services, to be available close on hand. Okay? Excuse me for taking the horrible, what's that word? Initiative to offer everybody else some work.
That's fine. So I was going to talk later on, but we do have the Maihi Partnerships Program that was set up when we were, George, 2019. So There's a function across all government agencies that have a housing function. We come together to talk about those housing projects that have come across our doors, and to see how we can coordinate our combined services and resources to support our whānau to get their housing developments across the line. So for example, especially in the mixed housing development, but also at times we were lucky enough to get additional funding in 2020, but before that we were relying on pittance of funding. So like the classic duck movement, we were having the conversations with you, and frantically the feet were going in the background while we're having these conversations between ourselves to say, what can you do, what can you do, how are we going to pull this together for our whānau? And at times we've been able to really lean in on kāinga ora. Whilst they don't have the grant funding, they have that technical expertise to get your housing projects to being what everyone calls shovel ready, so ready to build. So in that way we've been able to lean on them. We talk between ourselves as well about what funding have you got left? We've got this funding. How can we combine it to support? We're also talking, we have other agencies sitting around the table as well, so MB, I'm not sure if it's still going, but they had funding for renewable energy, so off the grid power, and so again, they were sitting around the table with us, and we were saying, well, we've just signed off on these housing projects, so what say you look at them to get off the grid energy for their papakainga. So we're having those conversations in that way. It's by no means perfect, but it's a start, and at the same time we absolutely have to make some changes at that higher level across our agencies.
Just a quick question, Christina, is the Māori Land Court in that housing forum?
At a regional level, George says yes.
Okay, cool. We might need to figure out who that is. Because if I'm thinking if me and my colleagues don't know who that is, that's not helpful. However, what I do hear this morning is that you are looking for something that steps out the pathway for you. Now, I get in trouble for this, making career limiting statements. I don't have the answer to that whole pathway, but what I can commit to is trying to pull together the start of that pathway and then have a conversation with our colleagues up here so that perhaps you have something that is a little bit of a takeaway, so you at least know where you might start or begin your journey. Just going back to your kōrero, Evie, about the landowner who's in the whenua, that's a lifelong commitment, that is. And one of the biggest challenges we have in the Māori Land Court is the inactivity and disengagement of Māori landowners for a whole range of reasons. And so our responsibilities, and we saw that with the Reservation Trust that spoke to us yesterday afternoon, they spend most of their time just trying to bring the hapu back to the whenua. You know, so some of us actually have to commit to just that part of the journey, to getting people to reconnect back to the whenua, while others commit to development on their whenua, or like Ken, you are the disruptor on a different scale. Find our place in the sun, ladies and gentlemen, and value each other for that place that we have. You don't have to be the rangatira or the CE or the cultural advisor. You know, if you've got the tea towel in your hand, you have mana and you have value. So we need to learn to value each other's roles as we all go on this journey. Now that was my flash way of trying to take us from this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panel this morning, which was actually really informative and settled a lot of issues even in my own head. We're going to now break out into our two workshops. Hayden, do you still have a microphone in your hand? because we've got one workshop happening in here, and I think George Ma, you're staying in here, and then Hayden and the crew are heading into the Celebrity Lounge. Are there any specific... Oh, there. Mahi collaboration in here, and Kainga Order in the Celebrity Lounge.